Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives. And as I said 3 weeks ago, we're in the home stretch. We got 4 episodes left of Lyoko, so let's get this party train rolling and not stop till we reach the end of the tracks. Today we're going to be discussing episode 92 of Lyoko, Cold Sweat. And right off the bat, this is an episode that I am of two minds of. Mostly because half of it is stuff I enjoy, and the other half is stuff I absolutely loathe. So, let's start with the half I loathe. The B plot for this episode kicks off when Yumi goes to Katic and Millie and Tamiya are selling the daily paper. And it turns out that someone gave them a picture of Yumi from like when she was younger, of her in a frilly pink dress with like a blonde wig. And of course, the picture is super embarrassing. Everyone's laughing at her, and Yumi herself is obviously pissed. She wants to know who it is, and Millie and Tamiya, while not saying the name, do direct Yumi to go to the rec room because, as Tamiya puts it, he's probably in there playing skee-ball. As such, Yumi is able to piece together very quickly who it is, and yeah, that person's Odd. It turns out, however, Odd is fully aware that Yumi is probably going to come for his hide. So before Yumi arrived, he tells Auric, "I want you to take the blame for me because we're buddies." And Auric decides, sure, I'll do that. And when Yumi arrives, she's just absolutely pissed. And Odd is just playing oblivious, acting like he doesn't know what he's talking about it, or keeping true to his word, does take the blame for it, which in turn directs all of Yumi's ire to him to the point where she just says, "I don't want to talk to you, like at all." And of course, Auric himself is not happy with being the center of Yumi's ire again. And as the episode goes on, that ire continues to grow to the point where he actually reconsiders telling the truth to Yumi. Something Odd keeps trying to say, no, you promised, man, you promised. But, thankfully, that plot gets a little derailed, not a lot, but a little derailed when Jeremy and Aelita tell the group that they've located another replica and they're going to go destroy it that night. In this case, the replica is actually located in a supercomputer in a Siberian base. So it's in a snowy area, so the replica is a replica of the ice sector. And so once they get in, because of Yumi's ire towards Ulrich, she instead wants to be partnered with Odd, since again, she doesn't, because Ulrich took the blame, she's not angry at Odd. As such, they go in, and of course, things go the way you would typically expect. The away team is off trying to make sure that they're just trying to find the supercomputer and destroy it so they can destroy the replica, whereas the team in Lyoko is doing their best to keep everything occupied, and XANA, of course, is keeping their hands full, as just as before, he activates a tower to try and give the away team a disturbance to keep them from destroying the supercomputer. Only this time, he's kind of upped his game a little. So, remember a few episodes back where XANA, to try and even the score, de-virtualized William and sent him to the factory? Well, XANA kept that thought in mind, only this time he's repurposed. He's taken another page from Jeremy's book, as he manages to virtualize William into the real world, the same way that Jeremy is able to virtualize the other Lyoko warriors. So, when Yumi and Odd are searching the Arctic base for the supercomputer, William appears in like sparks of black and green lightning, Buster sword and all, and it's admittedly really damn cool. And because he's seemingly linked to a XANA activated tower, he doesn't just go poof when they hit him with their weapons, although that does slow him down. As such, because to try and give Odd and Yumi an edge, Ulrich and Aelita have to try and locate the activated tower, and so that's exactly what they do. They, of course, encounter the typical resistance with a mega tank, 2 tarantulas, but everything seems to go well. And in the meantime, Odd and Yumi do continue evading William until they eventually are cornered in a laboratory. And it's in the laboratory where we see another hint at whatever XANA's plan is, as we see that they're the lab that they're in, the room that they're in, seems to have all these weird big green vials and tubes around, and in some of the tubes are brains, human brains, all of them connected to like electrodes that are plugging into the system, that are plugging into the tubes. And just looking at them, it's like, what the hell is this? Which, again, I never saw Lyoko all the way to the end, so I'm just as clueless as they are right now. But at the same time, it definitely kind of raises a lot of red flags, because especially since you do want to know how it fits into with the tarantulas, the motherboard, and those orb things they encountered in space. But however, they don't have a lot of time to ponder on that before William attacks. But thankfully, like I said, Aelita does get to the tower. But before she deactivates, she realizes something. XANA is using this tower to virtualize William into the real world, meaning it's keyed in to William's virtual signature. Which means that if they hack it while it's still activated, they may be able to get an idea. They may be able to find the programs that XANA uses to control William. And so, Aelita goes about at looking through the files and programs on the tower and sends them straight to Jeremy before she deactivates it. Which means the group now has a tool that they can use to try and free William. Now, thankfully, this does get rid of William in the Siberian base. In the meantime, and it allows Yumi and Odd to escape till they can eventually find the supercomputer. But of course, it still causes problems in Lyoko, as now in Replica, as William is back there. So, as such, Ulrich and Aelita have to go and stop him from deactivating their tower, which they thankfully do. It's rather easy stuff. They're getting better at this, to the point where even William's badass Buster Sword is not putting up much of a challenge. And so, of course, Yumi and Odd do manage to find the supercomputer, and Jeremy thinks that maybe if they can go work through it, with some finesse, they can just turn it off without destroying everything. But as they're waiting for Jeremy to map it out, to give them an idea of how they can turn it off, Jeremy suddenly gets an alert on the computer. And it's here where he learns something very major. The group has been operating under the assumption that XANA only has a handful of replicas at his disposal, like just a few supercomputers here and there, and that if they destroy them all, everything will be good. The alert, however, is showing that XANA has access to hundreds of supercomputers and replicas. But the thing is, Jeremy doesn't just learn that because he was Googling it or something. It's because he learns this because all of those supercomputers are suddenly having a massive surge and are coalescing their power together. What does that mean? Well, back on Lyoko, Ulrich and Aelita heard a booming. Just a slow booming that's just getting closer and closer. We get a shot of something walking in the ice sector. Something big and something made of molten rock and lava. We see it from its perspective as its head. We see from its perspective as it walks across the ice sector. Its head peeking out over 2 large mountains surrounding the tower that Jeremy has activated. Ulrich and Aelita hear it, and they turn around to look at it. And it's here where we're introduced to, hands down, the most powerful monster in XANA's arsenal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first appearance of the Colossus. Spelled with a K-O, because Odd named it. And oh me oh my, this thing is a beast. This thing is so big that it can actually grab a tower in its hand. And while its size can be a little bit of a detriment, because as we saw, it's slow, it is powerful. Because the instant Ulrich and Aelita see this thing and describe it to Jeremy, Jeremy's first response is, run. Run fast. And before they can even run too far, it manages to use its free hand, which is a giant sword, to smash the ground and then just sweep it aside, and with just one swing it devirtualizes Ulrich and Aelita. And with them gone, it redirects its attention to the tower. And like I said, this thing is so big it can hold a tower in its arm. Like, this is like, I imagine on the Colossus, this is the tower. That's what it can do. And like I said, its hand is a giant sword, so you can easily just knock it aside. And that's skid. And so with the skid gone, that would be the end of everything. As such, Jeremy realizes this plan is a bust. We gotta go. As such, he ports Odd and Yumi back to the skid, and before the Colossus can destroy the skid, they just make a run for it. As such, back in the factory, faced with this new threat, the group is trying to figure out what they need to do next. And Jeremy realizes that going forward, they can't keep doing what they were doing before. For one thing, the Colossus is so powerful that if they even found another replica, then it could just destroy them before they could even wipe out the supercomputer. So so they have to be more careful. And on top of that, because of the Colossus's creation, Jeremy is now aware that there are hundreds of replicas, and they're not just going to stop XANA by destroying one here, one there. Well, if they want to stop him, they need to think of they need a better plan, because no matter how many they destroy, there are backups and backups and backups. So Jeremy realizes, we need a better plan. I need to think this over. As such, the episode ends with the group heading back to Caddick. Yumi talking with Ulrich because during the mission she and Odd talked, and Odd, to cover his ass, said that Ulrich probably did it because love makes you do crazy things. Yumi is actually a little flustered by this and just talks to Ulrich, thinking that he put the picture in the newspaper because he wanted them to fight so that she'd be on her mind, which is, I don't know. I really don't know. But she says next time just talk. But Ulrich, who is already getting and Ulrich gets flustered at this and just says, okay, sure. But at that point, Odd calls Yumi and tells her the truth, because Ulrich was essentially pretty much just telling him, you tell her, I will kick your ass. And so Yumi, realizing that she bore her heart and is now embarrassed, decides to get revenge on them by releasing a picture of them. That's embarrassing. We thankfully don't see it, but it's enough so that Ulrich, when he hears about this and learns what Odd did, wants to try and kill him again. So like I said, I'm of two minds of this episode. One half of the episode, I think, is really damn good. And the parts that I think really work are the parts that have to do with Lyoko and continuing the overarching plot. It's been a little while since we've seen a replica in Lyoko, and the last time we saw that was with the Sector 5 replica. As such, it's kind of cool seeing another replica and seeing the group virtualized in the real world. On top of that, through that, we once again get more hints at what's going on with XANA, with the brains in the jars. It kind of, the fact that XANA is getting this started, is producing this, it makes you wonder what he's doing, because with the way things are going, it looks as though there's some kind of machine-human interface thing going on here, because that's just kind of what I'm starting to theorize. I don't know anything certainly, because like I said, I didn't see Code Lyoko all the way to the end, so I'm actually a bit in the dark here. But seeing everything he's done so far with the mechanical spiders, the mainframe, the mainframe boards, and the orbs, it looks as though XANA might be trying to develop something akin to like a human-machine hybrid. I don't know what his plan is, but it's definitely feeling very icky, and looks like it's gonna step into Cronenberg territory. So I don't know. Maybe his plan's something completely different, but we'll find out as the series winds down. So I like seeing more of that. But another thing I also like is seeing XANA continuing to amass power and once again showing him getting smarter. I like that we see him getting creative and learning and actually again learning from the group. Like I said, when we saw William attack the factory, that was clearly meant to be some kind of subterfuge, like you attack my house, I attack yours. But seeing XANA decide, hey, I see what you're doing, I think I can do that too, and virtualize William into the real world, I think that's actually really cool. And if I'm gonna be honest, I actually like how William's Buster Sword looks in the real world as opposed to it does in Lyoko. It looks darker. It looks more sleek. I love how the hilt of the blade clashes with the blade itself. Really awesome. Really awesome. Of course, it's a little stiff, but that's kind of what you get with the animation. But still, really damn cool to see that. Also, one little funny scene where at one point, William's leg gets a little frazzled from Yumi throwing her fan at it. So at that point, Odd tries to shoot him with his laser arrow. But he's shooting empties. So the instant William's leg is fine, he just gives Odd a blank look and just kicks him, which I think is funny. It's like, oh well, boot to the head. Again, I love little things like that to show that it's still technically William. I love that. So that is really damn cool. But what I also love is we see more progression on both sides. We see the group learning more about XANA's overall plan, not just with the brains, but with the revelation that there are hundreds of replicas. And the group realizing we can't keep doing what we're doing because if we do, it's not going to get us anywhere. So I like that revelation, and it's forcing the group to try and think of new strategies and how they can combat XANA. On top of that, because they finally were able to deactivate a tower that was linked directly to William, it gave them access to his files, to all the programs that make up his virtual avatar, and by extension, the programs that XANA uses to keep William under his thrall. So I like seeing them take advantage of that and at least try and get that information to use later. We don't see them like using the episode. Of course, they have bigger things to worry about than right now than just freeing William. So, but at the same time, it's cool that they actively take those steps. That they are smart enough to realize, hey, this stuff could help us later. Let's take it while we can. So I love that, and of course, I love the Colossus. The first time I ever saw the Colossus was in the Lyoko video game, which was loosely based on, well, not loosely, but somewhat based on Season 4 of Lyoko. So the first time I saw the Colossus was as a boss fight. So seeing it now in the actual show, it looks really damn cool. And I love how they introduced it. It was given a lot more fanfare than any other of XANA's monsters, which I think makes total sense for just the scope of this thing. It is one of the most powerful monsters there, and they do not lie. It's one of the ugliest. Like I said, its entire body is made of molten rock and lava. Its arm is a giant sword with look like barnacles on the hilt. Its head looks like a weird squid head with like little tentacle beards and little tentacle horns coming out. And like the blocks, it's got more than one XANA symbol. One on its head and one on its arm. However, while the blocks, whatever the central XANA symbol is whichever one is facing forward, for the Colossus, both eyes are its main eyes. And as we learn later, I guess I'm going to give a spoiler here, those eyes are not just like one weak... if you want to destroy the Colossus, you gotta go for both weak points. Hitting one or the other will result in maybe the Colossus being stunned, but if you want to kill this thing, you gotta hit them both at the same time. So that in turn also makes it a big threat, because we see just how big this thing is, and, well, Aelita and Ulrich do at least have the bright idea to throw their weapons at this thing and try and stop it, and it doesn't even notice. It just, like, shrugs them off before... It just shrugs the weapons off before it shrugs them off. So, this is clearly a very powerful foe. And with this thing now on XANA's side, you realize, even if the group didn't learn about all the hundreds of replicas, they would realize, we need a way to counter this. And I think that's a great way of raising the stakes. Keeping the group just like on their toes, realizing we need to find a new way of doing things. So that all I think is really damn good. The plot progression, seeing XANA getting smarter, seeing both sides advance their causes with new methods, new plans. I love seeing that. It's really good, and it makes me invested and interested in seeing where the show will go. But then you got the counter. The half of the episode I loathe. I hate the subplot with Odd and the prank and the photo. I might have mentioned this at one point or another, so apologies if I'm repeating myself here, but I hate pranks. Giving or receiving. For me, I don't like being mean. I don't like making a joke at someone else's expense and then being like, yeah, that was funny. Didn't you find that funny? Why aren't you laughing? Because I feel like it's so easy for that to be wrong, for that to go wrong. Now, I know that there are people who love pranks, that like giving them or are okay with receiving them, but I'm not one of those people. I don't like seeing pranks go wrong because they can very easily go wrong. Feelings can be hurt. Friendships can be dented or, in the worst case scenario, broken because the pranker was not considered the prankee. Because the thing with pranking is that you have to know your audience, if you know what I mean. Because if you make a prank, it has to be something that, believe it or not it's not something that you just find funny. It's something that prankee can find amusing too. Even if they get annoyed with it at first, like have it be that the instant they learn this is all a prank, they can shrug. It can be something they can shrug off and is easily fixable. But if that's not the case, then you need to apologize. And for those of you that say, oh, then you just don't have a sense of humor, Sam. Why don't you like pranks? Pranks are nice and fun. They're not fun to me. I have been pranked, and it's not fun. The last major prank I got was a prank phone call from my brother. I mean, okay, he did not call me himself. He did like this little online thing. Like there's a site where you can go to where you can find pre-recorded prank calls, put in someone's number, and have them call that number. And I wound up getting one of those calls, and it was a call about stealing some guy's Wi-Fi. And when I got that call, I was terrified. I was angry. I was, honest to God, yelling at the phone, trying to convince who I thought was a real person that I wasn't stealing his goddamn Wi-Fi. And then by the time the recording ended and it said, you just got prank called, yeah, I felt an immense weight lifted off my shoulders, but I also wanted to cry. I am not one for pranks, but the thing is, and it can very easily go wrong. And you think that's funny? You think doing that, seeing someone in emotional distress, is funny? Now, if you can take the joke, good on you. But the joke has to be something that you can find funny. It can't just be something the pranker finds funny, and then if you get angry, they just go like, oh, that's just a prank, bro. Because that doesn't make you look like a good friend. It makes you look like an absolute dick who's inconsiderate towards others' feelings other than your own. And in my opinion, that doesn't make you a friend. That makes you a bully. And I don't like bullies, if I've made that clear. So, and unfortunately, this episode does not paint Odd in a good light. He knows that Yumi is going to get upset with the prank. It's why he asks Ulrich to take the blame, because he thinks that Yumi will be kinder to him as opposed to Odd. But throughout the episode, Odd shows almost no remorse for his actions. He's just making excuses, shrugging it off, even when Ulrich gets on his nerves because of how upset Yumi is. Odd's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And even when Odd sees Yumi getting just upset and visibly pissed off about this prank because it's hurt her that much, Odd's just like, oh, but come on, it was funny, right? Come on. And even when Yumi says, no, it wasn't, Odd still is just hiding. He's not ready to take the blame. He's just ready to let Ulrich sit in the... He's perfectly fine with letting Ulrich just sit in stew and deal with the ire. The only reason he finally tells is because Ulrich pretty much threatens him and says, if you don't tell her, I'm gonna give you an ass whooping. He doesn't say that in those words, but it's heavily implied with what he's saying, and to Odd's credit, he thankfully does tell. That one little confession does make me soften up enough. But for the rest of the episode, it just hurts to watch. Seeing Yumi's feelings get visibly hurt by someone who's supposed to be a friend of hers, and who's just shrugging it off and being like, oh, come on, it was just a prank. Like, no. I don't give a damn if it was meant to be just a prank. Your friend is actually hurt by this. She's embarrassed, she can't show her face, and because you wanted to shift the blame to someone else, someone that she thought she could trust is now someone she absolutely is pissed at, and she even admits at one point in the episode, I don't think I can look at him I can forgive him for this. I think this could end my friend. I don't think I could see him as a friend after this. And at no point does Odd feel guilty. Now, to be fair, maybe that confession would make him less inclined to want to confess. But he doesn't feel guilty. At best, he gets nervous and then just tries to shrug it off and focus on something else. So seeing him do this, thinking that it's just okay because it's a funny prank, no. Screw you, Odd. And I think what makes it more irritating is that this actually feels out of character for Odd. While Odd may be egotistical and full of himself, something that has always been consistent with Odd is that he cares about his friends. Sometimes he's sometimes his pigheadedness does result in his friends getting the shaft, but never something more than annoyance. This is downright cruel and doesn't feel like something Odd would do in any context. So seeing how upset it's making Yumi, I feel like Odd at some point the guilt would get to him and he says, look, Yumi, I have something I want to tell you. But even then, it still boggles my mind why he thought this would be funny at all. I'm not going to say that Odd's the best at reading people, but at the same time, he should get a sense of his friends, of what they would find funny and what they wouldn't. And even if he misjudged them and did this, even if we make an excuse and say that Odd misjudged what he thought Yumi would find funny and did this anyway, at the same time, I would still think he would say, okay, look, Yumi, I'm sorry. I thought it was fun. I thought it was gonna be funny, but it wasn't funny. You're clearly hurt. I told Ulrich to cover for me. I'm really sorry. I'll do whatever I can to make it up. Just don't be mad at him. Be mad at me. That is something that Odd would do. And again, to the episode's credit, he does eventually fess up. And you know what? Whatever penance or comeuppance that Yumi unleashed, Odd deserved it. Odd effing deserved it. But 95% of the time in the episode, I want to punch Odd in the face. And I don't like saying that, because Odd is honestly one of the best characters in the show. He gets so little development, but at the same time, he doesn't really need a lot of development. He's a good-natured kid who cares about his friends, and yeah, he's a bit egotistical, but at the same time, that egotism does come with merit, and he does have basis for it to be backed up. But seeing this episode, it made me almost hate him. Again, they do at least somewhat salvage his character by having him confess, but it's still waterlogged with so much of the stink of what he did. And it annoys me and gets on my nerves in a way that the rest of the episode does not. Honestly, before the William getting the virtualized stuff, before they got the program, before the Colossus and all that, I was ready to hate this episode. Like, I thought that was gonna, like, that stuff was gonna be like a good chunk of it, and it is. That's why I am of two minds on this episode. But then all the cool stuff happened, and I was like, what side do I take? So, again, if I had to give an opinion on the episode, like, it's of two minds. The stuff about it that I think works, the stuff with Lyoko, the group having to change their plans, seeing both sides escalating, seeing the Colossus, seeing the group learn more about what's going on. That stuff I think is really damn good, and that is what I want to see more of and want to see expanded on. The BS, however, with Odd and the prank and the photo, no. I effing hate that. I absolutely loathe that. If I ever watch this episode again, I could see myself just skipping through that, because that really did tick me off. But again, the stuff that I think is really good makes it worth watching and makes me want to come back and see more. It's just that, again, it's hampered down by this other half. So, again, I suppose I'm of two minds of this episode. On the one hand, you got some really stupid character, or in this case, out of character BS that I feel really does not fit and really just drags the episode down. But then you get this other half that's really cool, really interesting, adds more lore to the world and the ongoing story, escalates things higher than they were before, and seeing it all come together, I think, really makes you want to know what the group is going to do next and how they're going to move forward. That, I think, is really damn good. It's just the other half is just dumb. Just absolute garbage. So, again, would I recommend the episode? It's one of those, again, it's one of those middle of the road episodes. Again, like you said, bad, good, both are even, there's an even amount of both in the episode, and if you can stand the garbage over here, the stuff with all the bullshit with Odd and the photo and the prank and the hurt feelings, then I think you will find a really good episode, because there's a lot added on, there's a lot more that expands on the story, and it's a lot more to keep you invested, and I genuinely think that will work. But if this stuff is something you can't ignore, something that that you look at and think, why are they doing this? Then I think that this might not be an episode that you may want to kind of just skim through, because there's a lot of good and important stuff that happens in this episode. It's just that you got to deal with this other side to get it, which, yeah, that stuff is really hard to get through, at least for me. So, overall, if you can take this, you're in for if you can take the crap, then you're in for a really good episode. But if you can't, best to just skim through this one. So, yeah. I guess that's really all I have to say. I'm sorry if I pissed you off or if I made you angry, if you disagree with me or anything. Remember, these are just my opinions. You're free to disagree with me, and if you do disagree with me, then I implore you to tell me why you disagree with me in the comments. Just remember to be respectful, be nice. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Hopefully with an episode that doesn't have as much of this. So, yeah. Take care, everyone, and hope you have a good night.